Have you ever wondered how we got from sticks and stones to the internet and space travel? I mean, there's literally a computer which can do 2 quintillion calculations a second, and its development can be traced all the way back to cavemen. And that's exactly what this video is going to do. So come join me as I recount the entire history of technology, from pre-human times to some of the most groundbreaking modern developments. But first, let's visually organize this video. The background will be what the world generally looked like at that time period, while the top right corner will track the most recent developments with dates, and the top will have the period name. Now is a good time to hop right into the Paleolithic Era. Oh look, it's a caveman. Let's name him Gort, but he's not a human yet. He's part of the species Homo habilis, which came before the species that came before humans. Oh look, Gort just got a rock and hit it against another rock. And look at that, our first development, a pointy rock, professionally known as Aldewan stone tools. Now, let's wait a quick million years, and Gort has transformed into Homo erectus. Homo habilis is out of style now. With his new enhanced brain, Gort got a brand new idea. What if he hits a rock against another rock, but like more times, and shapes them so they actually fit in his hand? And there you have it, a brand new invention, a pointy rock, also known as Acheulean hand axes. Is this a good time to mention that the time spent between these two inventions is 3 times longer than all of human history? It took us 3 times longer to go from this pointy rock to this pointy rock than from the second pointy rock to a brain chip that lets you mind control a mouse just by thinking about it. Okay, we have to speed this up. We're not even humans yet. Gort refines his pointy rock, making Acheulean bifaces, which are nice and symmetrical. Then he finds a special rock, which we call flint. Flint is really easy to chip away at, also known as flint knapping. When shaped properly, flint can make razor-sharp edges, great for hunting and chopping. Gort, using his big brain, also realizes that flint makes little sparks, and he's kinda cold. So, putting those sparks in some tall dry grass, Gort makes fire, which helps him stay warm in the winter. Now, Gort is pretty happy, but he doesn't really like using the same rock for everything, so he makes a cleaver, a specialized rock for chopping and slicing, and a scraper, a specialized rock for fine detail work. And now, we wait. And wait. Just a million years left, and boom, we made it to Homo sapiens, also known as humans. Gort has maximized his intelligence, and he is ready to make some new discoveries. He starts by updating those ancient pointy rocks, making new, fancy, Upper Paleolithic blades, also known as pointy rocks. He then realizes he's been gathering a lot of bones and hide from all these small animals he's killed. Those have to be useful for something. He first uses the hide to cover himself to stay warm and protect from bugs, but quickly realizes that it doesn't stay on him that well. Maybe we should leave that for later. So he sharpens a little bone down into a sewing needle, which will also be important later. Then, Gort quickly realizes he needs more pointy rocks. So he creates even better flint blades, and whoa, look at that huge antler. And you already know what Gort is thinking. I could make some tools out of that. He was so excited, he ran all the way back to his caves, and with his little sewing needles and other precise tools, he made a little cave drawing of it. Then Gort said, "Hey, I'm tired of only hunting small animals like rabbits and chipmunks. Let's make a bone harpoon and some hooks for getting fish. Then let's tie some sticks to all my old pointy rocks with some grass fibers, and with another stick and even more fibers, make a bow. Now we got a bow and arrow for hunting big prey like elk. But bows tend to break, so let's use a longer arrow and just throw it, and use an atlatl to help get some leverage." Now, Gort is thriving, killing every animal in his path. So much so, he decides to make even more pointy rocks, and smooth rocks, and all kind of rocks. And look at that, we did it. We finished the entire Paleolithic era. Only 23 more to go. Well, welcome to the Mesolithic era. And you just know we have to start it off with a completely new invention, pointy rock. But this time, they're called microliths, and are really, really tiny, which opens the door for countless precise inventions. Now, let's update some old technologies. Remember those handheld Acheulean hand axes? Let's update those to have actual handles, known as ground axe heads. Those fishing harpoons and hooks also kinda suck at catching fish, so let's add some barbs on the harpoons, and let's use some wood and grass strings to make fish weirs and nets. Now, let's perfect our pointy bones to make awls, and use our fish hooks to make some composite fishing gear. Now that we can actually fish well, let's go back to that bow and arrow idea. It didn't really work that well, causing most people just to use spears, so let's update it so it actually works. Oh, hey there, wolf. Oh, you want some meat? Well, I guess I could give you just a little. And just keep doing that for a few 10,000 years, and look at that, we have dogs. These stone tools kind of hurt Gort's hand also, so let's polish those out with our little tools. And actually, do you remember when I said this needle would be really important later? Well, now is later. With some improved string, some hide, and those needles, Gort creates the first clothing. Then he finds some mud, but it's weird. He just found clay, and when he dries it over his fire, it becomes hard and brittle. That gave him an idea to make a little bowl and keep all of his pointy rocks. He then decides to add some of his cave drawings on the pots because it's much easier to carve than hard rocks. You know what? Gort is tired of all these small tools. He wants to do something big, so he creates the milling stone to crush anything he wants, just because. This will definitely be important later. Then he gets a bit ambitious with inventions like stone boats, bone combs for his hair, and some better tools for clothing, and upgrades his clay pots. Wait, do you hear that? It's arguably the most important technological development in human history. Looks like we have to go to the Neolithic era. Did you guess it? Well, it's agriculture. Gort decided, you know what, I'm tired of finding roots and plants to eat. I'm gonna plant my own, which will eventually lead to the domestication of plants. Then he realizes, wait, what if I just take the animals and feed them the plants I'm growing? Now all the animals will want to be with me, and I can eat them also. But now I have all these animals and plants, I'll never eat all this myself, and I have nothing to do now. I used to spend most of my day hunting, but now I can just stay here at my cave all day. But soon, enough other humans start hearing about Gort's grand discovery, giving him virtually unlimited food. So hungry, they flock to him, starting by the dozens and soon by the hundreds. Gort is now the leader of a rising nation, so he better get to work fast. He gets all his people tinkering. Glorb came up with better pottery, naming it ceramics, while Crack came up with the sickle to help harvest the fast-growing plants. Chorba came up with weaving, a way to make clothes faster for all the new residents, while Snulu made the plow, helping more plants grow out from seeds. Tood came up with dirt irrigation systems to keep the plants wet, while Bardog polished the axes. With all this support, Gort wanted to build a monument to signify the importance and power of his rising civilization. So he builds a big rock pile. Seriously, how is this a wonder of the world? Anyway, Idol makes a large sail from that weaving technology, allowing boats to go without paddles. And soon enough, the wheel, domestication of horses, looms for weaving, clay bricks, early cities, pottery kilns, chariots, and canal irrigation all were invented. And Gort starts getting overwhelmed. How is he supposed to keep track of all this stuff while still keeping the order and peace? So he calls in the smartest masterminds he knows, and they create cuneiform, the first written language. Now, he can write down all sorts of information, like laws, history, educational texts, and even just notes to be sent to friends. Society is really starting to take form. Enough for us to finally change the background to this. Oh, wait, what is this? A stone tablet from Oiron saying he found a strong material that could revolutionize society? He calls it bronze. With the discovery of bronze, humanity has entered into the Bronze Age, with the first technological development obviously being bronze metallurgy, using those clay kilns from earlier. With the common use of clay, pottery wheels are invented to help produce pots faster, while sea travel using those old sails is updated to make them a bit smoother. Gort's ideas have really taken off, spreading across the globe, but it seems he is outdated. Sadly, Mesopotamia is not the main developer of the world anymore, so it's time we move on to ancient Egypt. Let's say our last goodbye to Gort the Caveman. You made the torch, but it's time for Ray to carry it forward. Ray starts off strongly, advancing early metallurgical workshops and starting astronomical observations. Ray quickly realizes that Gort's old dirt canals are just not cutting it for irrigation, so he goes and updates them into these nice smooth ones with gates to hold water during droughts as well. Then, with the Egyptians' rising society wanting to show off their pharaoh's power, they build the pyramids, the tallest structure in the world until the Eiffel Tower. But let's stay in ancient Egypt for now. Ray then designs complex ceremonial structures like the Averbury and pause. Remember way back in the Mesolithic period when I said milling stones would be important later? Well, I know it's been a while and you probably forgot, but yes, they're finally useful with the invention of water wheels. Now we have a lasting powerful energy source to finally put milling stones to a good use, like crushing grain into flour. But with all this flour, Ray needs to make some storage containers. He could even use glass, which just got invented, using some really fancy clay kilns. With the centuries flying by, Ray decided to set up a lunar calendar to keep track of the time. We could also use that bronze for armor, and let's make sundials to keep track of the days passing as well. We got so much time to keep track of, we could use a clay tablet to write it all down. With all these other civilizations popping up, we should probably update chariots and use the stars to sail to be even more efficient so we can trade or go to war. Wait, what was that? A big rock just fell from the sky, made of this funny new material that's even stronger than bronze. Let's call it iron. I sure hope we didn't just leak the entire next age 300 years early. Anyway, where were we? Oh right, ships. Let's update those and set up a better living system for all these people. A lot of these other technologies need updating also, like these water gates, so let's change those into dams instead and replace these bad plows with bronze plows and update the loom as well. Talking about looms, let's dye some of these textiles to make them nice and pretty, just not purple, that doesn't exist yet. Oh, what did you find there, Ray? A special plant while looking for dyes that helps people feel better? Well, it looks like we just invented medicine. Now, let's update our cities with some walls and roads for those chariots. Talking about chariots, let's update those so they run smoother on these nice roads and fix the alphabet so it's based on sounds instead of having a different symbol for every different object. Oh wait, that wasn't the Egyptians. All the way over here on the Mediterranean, this Sidon guy came up with a whole new language, and he discovered a better metal than bronze called iron? Well, say bye to Ray because we're moving on to the Iron Age. Wow, society looks so much more fancy. Nice roads, brick houses, it's really coming together. Sidon, you've really made a name for yourself. Good job. But we have a problem. My list of developments in this period is really long. Like 53 points long. So for the sake of time, and so I actually reach classical Greece in the next business day, I'm going to start off with a little speed round until we reach 800 BCE. In 3, 2, 1, go. We got iron smelting, iron tools, even better chariots, improved shipbuilding techniques, better iron tools and weapons, hydraulic engineering, domestication of camels, advanced horse harnessing, waterproof technology using bitumen, military fortifications, bronze mirrors, sealed ceramic containers, wind-powered irrigation, even better iron smelting, the horse collar, iron plows, better weaving techniques for like the 10th time, early artillery, improved calendar systems, solar observatories, astronomical tables, early water wheels, and better iron mining techniques. Sidon, you need to slow down. You're doing too much stuff too quickly. Back on a technology note, with new combinations of stone, clay, wood, and mud, multi-story buildings are invented. Sidon also started glazing his pottery to make it nice and pretty as well. Remember all the times I talked about improving weaving or looms? Well, it's actually starting to look pretty fancy now, with some really complex patterns. Seafaring navigation has become amazing as well. I mean, that's literally the main thing the Phoenicians were known for. Columns were invented around this time as well, so you know the Greeks are just around the corner. And remember those plants that Ray found that helped fix illness? We should probably expand on that with some better tools. This new material Sidon created, named plaster, might also be useful for interior design in the future. And now that we're using iron for all our tools, all this bronze is kind of pointless, so let's make some sculptures out of it or something. Those canals from the Egyptians got a massive overhaul with early versions of aqueducts, and talking about water, arch bridges just got invented as well. While the Phoenicians were making better military fortifications and road systems, all the way across the globe, steel was getting manufactured for the first time. This will be an important development way down the road. But back in the Mediterranean, geometry just got invented, and over in China, mechanical water clocks are keeping the time better than any sundial. In Turkey, with how much extra bronze is laying around, they start making bronze coins and using it as currency, while in the Near East, iron is being used for armor. Better kilns are being produced in Greece, while Sidon is updating the city layout. I mean, props to him. City planning is so hard that even today we can't seem to do it well. And finally, perfectly fitting to wrap up the Phoenicians, shipbuilding is updated even more. Well, the time of Sidon is now over, as Alexander in Greece is starting to lead technological advancement, but hopefully it's not too hard of a switch, as they're basically right next to each other. Welcome to classical Greece, with a new style of architecture and clothing and basically everything else. I mean, they had fancy public thermal baths, nice cobbled roads, and large stadiums. But while Alexander was living his fancy life, other Middle Eastern areas were making important developments. Cisterns were starting to be used to store large amounts of water, while Babylon started studying mathematical astronomy. In Persia, advanced agricultural techniques were being invented like crop rotation to maximize harvests as well, while India kept working on their metallurgy, making some cool new alloys. China invented some better hydraulic engineering with irrigation canals, while Greece created the first optical instruments. Talking about China, remember when they made the water clock way back in the Iron Age? Well, Greece just created their own version called the clepsydra. Alexander started using cranes and pulleys for construction, allowing a whole array of new possibilities in architecture. Alexander also invented Greek fire, a special chemical that was so flammable it could burn down a ship while it was sailing on the water. This sounds like it would suck to fight against, but at least we got these cool ancient flamethrowers. Sticking on the war theme, catapults were made to get over those pesky walls, and triremes were invented, which were a triple-decker warship. On a nicer note, coins started being commonly circulated, and theater was gaining popularity, with Thepsis inventing the tragedy. Alexander, being a big fan of philosophy, invented the early automata, which was most likely the first philosophical machine. Other developments in science also took place, like early hydraulic lifts being invented to help lift very heavy objects. But soon, Alexander started getting tired of all these new inventions. He wanted to go back to his roots and fix up some old inventions that society relied on, so he got Euclid to update geometry and started using those automata for theater as well. He then updated those astronomy tools and made astrolabes, and fixed up those aqueducts to make a more pipe-based system. Alexander then updated those outdated medical instruments to make the first surgical tools, and he didn't really like how inaccurate those old sundials were, so he fixed them up and made some advanced weaponry known as the ballistae to crush his enemies. These old building designs are kind of boring, so using some brand new architectural tools like calipers and levels, Alexander ordered the construction of some cool temples. These old water mills are also not cutting it, so they need to be redone, and using all these astronomical tools we invented previously, I think we could make some cool predictions for the future. To pass the time, you could look at these new funky optical illusions and try to understand why our eyes trick us. And about trying to understand, let's update our philosophical tools to make some early logic machines. And building on logic machines, if we put a lot of fancy pieces together with some even fancier engineering I definitely don't understand, we could build that Antikythera mechanism, also known as the first analog computer, which could make some pretty accurate astronomical predictions. Oops, looks like the Roman Empire just conquered Greece and became the center of European development, so you can probably guess where we're going next. Welcome to Rome. Octavius will be our guide through this grand period, and I know it's not too different from Greece yet, but don't worry, they're not slowing down the developments anytime soon. Octavius quickly realized that Alexander's society was pretty good, but some things needed improvement. Starting with the roads, Octavius replaced them with Roman-style roads, making them cheaper, faster to produce, and easier to move large armies across. Then, he discovered hydraulic cement, also known as Roman concrete, by mixing volcanic ash, water, and lime? But it wasn't just a gimmick. It could hold a lot of weight for a relatively cheap cost. Great for building huge monuments, which the Romans were kind of known for. Which transitions nicely into the construction of the Pantheon, which was made using many domes and arches, which helped strengthen large buildings as well. Even better, aqueducts were constructed, and the ballista was invented for attacking very distant armies or walls. Remember when glass was invented way back in ancient Egypt? Well, it's still kind of made in the same way, so let's update that with glass blowing. And those public baths from classical Greece could be updated as well to add heating and put a little house around them. That Roman concrete also got a pretty fast update, with some better formulas being discovered. And remember when I said those milling stones finally got used in ancient Egypt for crushing wheat into flour? So, I kind of lied. Technically, milling stones only got used in water mills now, but I'm going to pretend like somebody invented it previously. Oh, also, surgical instruments just got updated again, and road paving is getting very complex, with roads being built into the ground now with multiple layers. Military engineering was advanced by Octavius as well, with more city fortifications making Rome essentially impenetrable. Theoretically. On a real note, nice Roman villas were being constructed at the time with public toilets, so people don't need to throw their poop on the road like they do 1700 years in the future. Roman bridges started getting built with all the canals running through Rome, and the Hippocos system started being used to heat houses. Octavius started setting up extremely vast urban planning, copying off Alexander, due to the booming population of Rome at the time. Even better water clocks are invented, and Galen writes down some pretty useful medical information, like veins carry blood, not just air. I feel like we could have figured that out sooner. More complex Roman baths were invented, and even better bridges for the extensive Roman aqueduct system were built as well. Better ships were constructed for more trade across the Mediterranean, while public libraries were being built to teach writings like Vitruvius's engineering texts. Advanced recording became common in the Roman legal system, and marble quarrying just became possible, which might be used for some big projects in the future. Better water distribution systems were invented when Octavius decided to look at some older inventions. It's been a while since we looked at bronze and iron, so let's update those even more. Happy with his day's work, he traveled back to his villa just to realize this looks bland and boring. Let's spice it up with some wall paintings known as frescoes. Then, let's update those public baths even more and make both the sundial and water clocks even more accurate. Oh no. The Roman Empire just collapsed, but don't worry. I know you're probably thinking, oh great. Time for no technological advancements to happen for the next 1,000 years, but don't worry. There are still countless inventions during the medieval period, even in Europe. So don't click off yet, even though 95% of you are already gone, as there are still a lot of interesting developments. Well, welcome to the early medieval period. Obviously Octavius fled, so now we got Bartholomew. And don't worry, if his name annoys you, he's only going to be with us for longer than any other previous guide. Let's kick the developments off with the mold board, a much needed upgrade to the iron plow that's been used for a while now. The vertical windmill was invented at this time too, which will definitely become important later. Bartholomew then invents stirrups to help ride horses easier, which have been around for a while now. At around the same time, the Islamic world just discovered paper, which I know the Chinese have been using for a while now, but they really didn't do anything important with it. Watermills were given a much needed update to improve their efficiency, and architectural innovations surprisingly still happened, like Romanesque churches. The two-field system was implemented to improve agriculture, and chainmail became the standard armor to save materials and make armor lighter. Mechanical clocks started being created in the Islamic world, and the crossbow was invented, giving one of the first updates to the bow family since the Mesolithic period. Old versions of printing just started arising in China using block printing, and remember way back in the Iron Age when steel just started being developed? Well, now crucible steel started being developed in the Islamic world, but you're going to have to wait even longer before it becomes the world-changing material it is today. Bartholomew made some better castles to protect his riches from those pesky Vikings. The magnetic compass was invented in China as well, making sea travel much simpler. Gothic architecture started becoming more popular, mostly because Bartholomew is not rich enough to keep building things like those Roman palaces. Bartholomew also updated book binding because they tended to fall apart quickly, and while we were doing that, let's fix windmills so they blow horizontally as well. Thanks. Another really outdated thing from way back in the Neolithic era was just trusting your animals won't just leave. So let's build some pens to make sure they actually stay here. Now let's update ironworking techniques again and make the feudal system to top those gosh darn Vikings. Bartholomew just can't handle the fact that his stuff won't stop being stolen almost as much as you can't handle his name. Oh, and if things couldn't get any worse, algebra just got invented to ruin every middle schooler's love of math. But on a happier note, hydraulic pumps and astronomical instruments like the astrolabe just got updated. Parchment also got invented because paper keeps falling apart. And finally, glass got a much needed boost with cool new colors and the creation of early lenses and mirrors. And you know what? Bartholomew just isn't cutting it right now. Let's leave him behind for a moment and take a look at Muhammad over there, as he's making most of the important developments anyway. But don't worry, we'll be back eventually. Welcome to the detour out of Europe with the Islamic Golden Age. Muhammad started off strong with the quick development of distillation techniques, camera obscura, better paper manufacturing, algorithmic mathematics, refined optics, and better water and mechanical clocks. But we need to take a pause for a second because gunpowder just got discovered, so you know what that means. Guns, no, not guns, you American, rockets. And they can even be colored. Okay, outside of that tangent, those plants Ray discovered back in Egypt finally got their own branch of science, now called pharmacology, and detailed geographical maps started circulating as well. Even better surgical instruments get developed also, and soon a surgery won't be synonymous with a death sentence. Muhammad clearly dislikes that ugly Gothic architecture, so he creates the much more classy Islamic architecture and optical lenses almost good enough to help people see. Oh, and remember when Muhammad created algebra to ruin your love of math in middle school? Well, he also came up with trigonometry to make sure no one makes it through high school still liking math. You're welcome. Those detailed maps from earlier finally got their own study, also known as cartography. Hydraulic engineering is getting really good also, with all these consistent updates and windmills just becoming more efficient. Oh, and just an update on steel. It's being developed relatively fast, but Muhammad never really realizes its true potential. With the deeper understanding of plants and chemicals, lots of new science branches are taking off. Chemistry gets started, which allows for even better medical texts to be made in combination with the earlier mentioned pharmacology. By the way, you should remember the word wire for the end of the video. Ephemerides help organize all those complex stars that are constantly moving around. Physics just got invented as well, causing both philosophy and optics to receive a whole new array of discoveries. Which, yes, I know is two completely different areas of science, but they're all sort of stuck together right now. Now, before we head back to Europe, I know this section was on the shorter side, but don't forget that all three main branches of science, being biology, chemistry, and physics, were invented, meaning Muhammad opened some really huge doors for Bartholomew. Welcome back to Europe in the High Medieval period. Europe is about halfway done killing itself, but technology is nowhere near stopping its development. Bartholomew starts out by taking those gears from the automata and combines it with water clocks to make even better mechanical clocks. Then he updates plows to make them more efficient, but somehow forgets about steel. You know what? I just realized Bartholomew steals a lot of stuff and just remakes it as something new by combining it with something else he sold. So I'm going to call this segment the dropshipping age. Your goal is to guess what inventions he comes up with before I tell you, because it's literally that obvious. Let's start with lenses plus various metals. You guessed it, it's eyeglasses. What about the magnetic compass plus literally nothing? You guessed it, it's the magnetic compass, but now it's European. What about watermills plus more various metals? You guessed it, it's better mills that don't require a massive rock, because those are a little annoying to work with. Now, let's increase the difficulty a little bit. What about castles plus archers and lots of brick? You get circular stone walls with moats and windows for archers. Basically, what you picture when you think of a castle. What about when you mix paper and grain mills? You get paper mills, because handmade paper is not keeping up with demand. You know what, I'm tired of this game, I'll just tell you the rest. Gunpowder plus potassium nitrate and sulfur makes better gunpowder. Mechanical automata plus metal makes early metal machines. I can already smell the first industrial revolution brewing, even though it's like 4 periods away. Maps and charts plus those stolen compasses and fancy ships equals ships almost powerful enough to sail across the Atlantic. And finally, we are done with just combining old technologies. Turning over a new leaf, it seems Bartholomew finally decided to make a unique development with complex Gothic cathedrals. Windmills also always need to be parallel to the wind direction, so let's make some that work perpendicular too. And with all those developments in pharmacology from the Islamic Age, let's build some hospitals so people don't need to go to a different person for every different medical issue. And with Bartholomew's new mechanical machines, he built some better mechanical pumps. Better masonry with developments like Gothic arches also took place. On a more sad note, Bartholomew realized with all this metal he's been using, the people actually mining and refining it keep dying, so let's add some ventilation in the mines so they get some oxygen at least mixed in with the toxic fumes. Oh, and talking about refineries, let's make those better because Bartholomew doesn't like not metal mixed with his metal. And going back to those machines, lots of little developments like folding knives came from that as well, because people found almost endless ways to apply tools like screws, levers, and cogs. And to finish off the High Medieval period, textiles went through an entire renaissance of updates, so I'm just grouping it all into one development. Talking about the Renaissance, it's time to say bye to just kidding. You really thought we were saying bye already? I wasn't lying when I said he'd be here for a while. Welcome to the late medieval period. Yup, the medieval period is so full of developments, it gets 4 different periods inside of it. And for the purpose of this video, I marked the end of the medieval period in the 1500s CE. I know it's a hotly contested date, but just consider this age as the transition into the Renaissance if you'd like. Let's start with that updated gunpowder from the High Medieval period, because now you actually know what time it is. Guns. Yeah, America, and freedom, and eagles, and... oh wait, America has not even been discovered yet. Oh, and also cannons, but nobody really cares about that. On a similar note, crossbows were invented, which are basically the same as the handguns of the age, just bigger and shooting arrows instead of bullets. Better eyeglasses fine-tuned for reading were also invented, and the multi-blade windmills got updated for the millionth time. Bartholomew also just realized having a moat around his castles is not that useful when you can't actually lift up the bridge to get in, so he got tinkering and came up with the drawbridge. Even better steel production was being developed too, with the ratio of iron to carbon becoming very precise. And now for another one of the most important technological developments in history. 1440 CE, Germany. Gutenberg invents the printing press, which, in combination of the mass production of paper from those paper mills I mentioned a while ago, lets information travel insanely fast. But we have to wait a bit until the literacy rate gets above 30% before it will be realized how important it is. Let's move to something a little more tame, with double-entry bookkeeping being invented to organize finances better. Accurate hourglasses finally make an entrance, even though clocks have been around for a long time. And don't get me wrong, hourglasses were around for a long time, they just were not that consistent. Talking about clocks, fully gear-functioning clocks are invented, making them start to look similar to modern mechanical clocks. The astrolabe and sextant start being used commonly for sea travel, and with so many advancements in sea travel, it's no shock that the New World is discovered. Blast furnaces finally get an update, so Bartholomew can more consistently get them to steel-producing temperatures without it just falling apart. And remember, I'm still classifying this as late medieval. Yeah, that was a mistake. To be honest, this is already the Renaissance, so let's just hop over there. Welcome to the Renaissance, and finally, Bartholomew is out and Giovanni is in. Let's start off the Renaissance with another speed round until we hit the 1600s. We got copperplate engraving, better surgical tools, mechanical puzzles, machine-based hydraulic engineering, advanced shipbuilding, early telescopes, steel tools, star forts, stone and iron bridges, advanced camera obscura, repeating machinery, better art techniques, woodcut prints, and better pumps for mining. Okay, let's slow it back down and go into more detail on some of these much more complex inventions. We will start with realizing that we're going around the sun and not the other way around with Copernicus's heliocentric model. But, by the way, some Greeks knew this also, it just got forgotten and never really respected or proven. Torricelli invented the barometer to measure pressure, while Galileo made a more modern version of the telescope that could zoom in a lot more. Steam power started being developed in England, while Boyle created the vacuum pump, which probably has more importance than you realize. Pendulum clocks just got created with some of the most accuracy out of any clock so far. What's this guy's obsession with clocks? Oh, and by the way, if the Muslims couldn't ruin your math experience with trigonometry, don't worry, because Newton's got you covered with calculus now. The scientific method was invented by Francis Bacon also to standardize the way discoveries are made. Anatomy began being studied with scientists like Vesalius, and very precise tools like calipers started being used, allowing measurements as small as micrometers. Cartesian coordinates started being used to make math like calculus almost understandable. Then, Giovanni develops the thermometer to measure temperatures and upgrades guns to make the barrel longer so they can actually hit his target. Actually, let's take a step back here. This history has become modern enough that my guy Giovanni here doesn't really serve a purpose. We already know who made most of the developments all the way to the modern day. So from now on, I'm just going to use an image of what a person would look like at the time, but not name them because I'm going to be using actual scientists and engineers' names. Mechanical calculators start being used, so mathematicians don't need to do everything by hand. And logarithms are invented, which you're probably expecting me to make fun of, but you know what? They get the NiteFocus stamp of approval. Logarithms aren't actually that bad. Continuing on the math trend, discoveries about parabolic mirrors start being made, which can focus a lot of rays all into one spot. Other light-based discoveries, like a better understanding of waves and early projectors, are discovered as well. And to end off the Renaissance, We have some expected developments like better ships with caravels and improvements to mining, chemistry, and architecture. Welcome to the early modern and Enlightenment periods. Now, before you say, wait, these are two different time periods, why did you put them together? I made a bit of an oopsie. A lot of the early modern developments on my list ended up in the Enlightenment, and the same issue happened the other way around, so I'm just gonna put them together into one big period so I don't need to reorganize every development because scripting this is already taking long enough. We'll start with improvements to telescopes and optical lenses to make them even more precise in both large and small scales, using some fancy techniques like spectroscopy. With the use of better astronomical developments, more documents like Kepler's tables help further organize astronomy. Deeper mining gets developed because it's becoming harder and harder to find metals close to the surface. Early rotary engines start being constructed with very complex engineering and steel, while elements are being discovered left and right. Better refrigeration with ice helps preserve food for longer as distribution of food becomes more and more necessary, because people are starting to move away from just being farmers. Talking about farming, agricultural tools are still consistently getting updates, with the first widespread steel tools being used. The magnetometer was invented, which can measure Earth's magnetic field. I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue why that was important in the 17th century. On a more logical note, better printing techniques like etching and engraving start to be commonly used, and meteorology starts growing into its own scientific field, with some nice new instruments. Another new branch of science being developed at the time was microscopy, with all the new developments in lenses, and on a side note, air pumps became a thing. They're not really connected to science, I just had to put them somewhere. Back on the science note, experimental physics and chemistry are still growing rapidly as fields which create the mercurial thermometer and the marine chronometer. Oh, and also Boyle updated the air pump. I'm not joking, that literally was the next development on my list. The smell of the Industrial Revolution is getting really strong now, with the spinning jenny and Watt's improved steam engine being developed. Staying on the industrial note, Watt also invented the condenser, and electricity is just getting understood, with Franklin's discoveries. Better furnaces and boring machines, yes, it's literally called that, were some more early industrial-esque developments. And on the note of electricity, electrostatic machines and early electrolytic cells start being discovered, which is how things like lemon batteries work. More detailed human anatomy started being discovered, which greatly helped pharmacology. Sextants also got more industrialized, looking like this now. Lots more innovations also got into a crash course, with machinery causing developments like the hydraulic press, mechanical reapers, lithography, and the voltaic pile battery. Early vaccination started being developed as well, with Jenner's smallpox vaccines, which would have been extremely useful for the natives a couple hundred years prior. Going back to the voltaic pile, Volta also experimented with practical electricity, which is going to be very important very soon. But let's first end off the early modern and Enlightenment period with compound steam engines, the mechanical loom, and the cotton gin. You already know what time it is, so I won't waste any time beating around the bush. It's time for the Industrial Revolution. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution, a period known for its technological developments, so you already know it's going to be chock full of groundbreaking discoveries. Let's hop right in with the spinning mule to make fibers and the power loom, which could mass produce high-quality textiles out of those fibers. Stephenson's steam locomotive also was invented, which is relatively similar to the steam locomotives used today. The miner's lamp helped miners at least see their death coming in those horrid conditions, while the drassine started being used on the surface, which is basically a bicycle. Factories started popping up everywhere, with mechanized systems found all across the inside. Gas started being used as artificial light in dark areas like these factories, as they didn't want their workers seeing the days passing without any breaks. On a much more important note, however, the first Morse code telegraph is sent, while the first photograph is taken with the daguerreotype. Screw propeller ships start being used so the wind is finally not necessary to go anywhere, as it tends to not always be blowing in the direction you want. Back on the land, Faraday developed some electromagnetism studies which helped a lot with understanding electricity. Rotary engines and mechanical reapers both industrialized their respective predecessors, which both used steel produced using the Bessemer process, which was the only inexpensive way of producing steel at the time. Railway systems were greatly expanded in countries like the United States, which can carry all this new stuff across the entire nation. Industrial sewing machines were the final step to fully industrializing clothing and other fabric-based items. Talking about improvements, better mining techniques helped full-time miners be finally able to reach the age of 35. Back on the surface, modern canals require modern bridges, so both were obviously developed. Scientific instruments also became more precise than human senses, with a variety of spectrometers being invented. Early electroplating started being used, which is like a microscopic layer of an unreactive metal like gold or silver used to protect commonly used reactive metals like nickel or zinc. Photographs got barely better with the collodion process, but at least it's pretty simple. With all these new large machines, gas engines started being produced, which was the only real option to get large amounts of power other than steam. Talking about steam-powered factories started popping up throughout Europe, and better seed drills and plows helped automate farming as well. Talking about farming, artificial fertilizers started being developed, which increased the size of plants like crazy. Sanitation systems started being used in places like the newly constructed modern hospitals, so maybe those miners could actually reach 50. No, just kidding. And that wraps up the Industrial Revolution. I know it was a bit short, but come on, this video has to end someday, so let's just get to the early 19th century already. Welcome to the early 19th century. Not the 1900s, the 19th century, which is the 1800s. We're not that close to modern day yet. And just a side tangent, yes, it does make sense the 1800s are called the 19th century, and if you don't agree, you know what, never mind. Let's just stick to the technology, starting with the rotary printing press and canned food. Laennec invents the stethoscope. Oh, and if you remember Faraday, he was the guy who made important electromagnetism discoveries. He now came up with the electric motor. To add on our list of potential materials to make things out of, rubber just got created with rubber vulcanization, which basically hardens rubber into its desired texture. Singer made its first sewing machine, which is funny because you can probably still find a Singer sewing machine at your grandma's house. The internal combustion engine was invented in France, but surprisingly it still takes about 50 more years for the first cars to be made. I mean, they even have rubber for the tires already, and we all know the wheels and the engines of a car are the only important part. Zeppelin designs the first airship, and sorry for interrupting again, but I can't be the only person who didn't realize Zeppelin was an actual guy. Something those Zeppelins could definitely have used is some fireproof materials, which ironically is our next invention. Steel gets even more precise, which I'm going to stop mentioning as there are literally hundreds of little changes that are made all the way up to modern day. And finally, in the 1840s, anesthesia and antiseptics start being used during surgeries, so for the first time since the Middle Ages, surgery isn't synonymous with death. Babbage designed an even better mechanical calculator, and vacuums are invented, which is actually really impressive without electricity. Agriculture gets yet another upgrade with more fancy machinery like threshes and harvesters. Talking about upgrades, both telescopes and microscopes are still getting almost exponentially better, and electricity is still being messed with a little, but it's not very useful yet. One keyword for the end of the video is tennis. On a very useful note, ice machines or early refrigerators are becoming more than just a big block of ice. And to finish off the early 19th century, we got just a few more upgrades to water wheels, steam-powered factories, and improved chronometers and sextants. Welcome to the mid-19th century. Well, you'll definitely recognize a lot more of these inventions. Let's start with the more widespread use of the electric telegraph, which leads to the construction of the transatlantic telegraph cable, which was only permanently decommissioned in. Staying on the telegraph, the repeater was invented to allow signals to travel even further. Compound engines just got invented also, helping improve steam engines even more, while the torpedo starts getting tested out. Cameras just got the photographic colliding process, which basically developed pictures faster. Singer also improved the sewing machine, and anesthesia just got even better with chloroform. The hydraulic lift is invented to help get up to high areas, while early incandescent light bulbs are first tested. Yep, that's right, Edison is still about 2 decades down the road and light bulbs already exist. Elevators are invented, so now your non-industrial people can get up high as well. The Transcontinental Railroad is built across the US, and the automatic loom is designed so now people don't need to make all these textiles by hand. Aluminum can finally be taken out of alloys, which makes it go from the most expensive metal in the world to one of the least very fast. Oh, and look at that, steam engines are portable now, which is cool, I guess. Speaking about cool, sulfuric acid just got developed, which is actually really useful for fertilizer production, not whatever you were thinking of. Both the hydraulic press and electric motors got an upgrade, and modern photography just got invented with albumin prints, which don't take forever to develop and are much clearer. Refrigerated rail cars just allowed foods like meat and seafood to be transported quite far before going bad. Back in the factories, precision machinery is passing humans in detail, while gas lighting systems are further improved. Nobel, the guy who started the Nobel Peace Prize, just invented dynamite. A little ironic. And to finish off the mid-19th century, we have the invention of the typewriter, which got us stuck with this horrible QWERTY layout forever, and the construction of the Suez Canal. I didn't warn you it's coming this time, but industrialism is growing rapidly across the world again. It looks like we better head in for round 2 with the second Industrial Revolution. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution 2.0. I know I said you would recognize a lot of the inventions from the mid-19th century, which was somewhat true, but this time I can almost promise you that you'll recognize over half the inventions. Let's start off with the Otis safety elevator, which was, as expected, a safer elevator. Bell just finished up his invention called the telephone. It's some weird machine which I doubt you've heard of. At about the same time, Otto's 4-stroke engine came out, which looks very similar to modern combustion engines. Edison just invented the phonograph, also known as the record player, which changed humanity forever, and he also worked on the light bulb on the side. Keeping in with the electronic inventions, Tesla just came up with alternating current, revolutionizing electricity, while Graham invents the electric dynamo, which changes mechanical energy into electricity. Benz invents the automobile, with diesel engines coming not much later. Cities start getting populated with electric trams, refrigerators, and typewriters, which are becoming more day-to-day sights instead of the previous industrial powerhouses they used to be. Back in the factories, ball bearings and early industrial robots are starting to be used. With the more widespread use of electricity, the electric fan starts being sold, and electric welding is used to connect metal pieces together without needing to incinerate it each time. The X-ray machine starts being experimented with, which ironically did not kill its inventor, Röntgen. The modern elevator system, being a mix of hydraulic and electrical parts, is invented, while Lister invents some better antiseptics. Pasteur creates the rabies vaccine, which is the first modern-style vaccine. Engineering has become many times more precise than humans, and as a side note, let's reinforce concrete so it doesn't just fall apart the second the word earthquake even gets said. The microwave oven and vacuum cleaners are soon going to be found in lots of households across the world, while hydraulic machinery is getting even stronger. The electric grid starts to be set up, with electric power transmission becoming very common across the USA and Europe. The Lumiere brothers invent the cinematograph, which is basically a projector. Graphite electrodes start being used industrially, while early submarines are being tested. And to finish off the second industrial revolution with the common sight of electricity, telephone exchange systems start popping up, allowing house-to-house calls. And look at that, we already reached the year 1900. To put into perspective how close we are to the modern world, in 7 years, the oldest person alive today is born. But don't worry, this video isn't over yet, as we still have 6 full segments left. Welcome to the early 20th century, which with its 2 world wars actually boosted technological developments in a lot of ways. Let's start with radio transmission, which increased general global communication a lot. The Wright brothers created the first airplane, which will be improved on a lot in the next few decades. Planck creates quantum theory, which revolutionizes the way a lot of scientists view the world, while De Forest invents vacuum tubes. Einstein, disliking this quantum theory, comes up with his own theory of relativity, which also revolutionizes scientists' view of the world. The ECG machine, or the thing that makes the line that shows someone's heartbeat, now is used to determine if someone is dead or not, while one of the most recent materialistic discoveries is made with the invention of plastic. Still on materials, superconductors are being researched and other special fibers like nylon and rayon's unique properties are being tested. X-ray crystallography is used to start seeing matter at the atomic level, while sonar is first being tested to detect enemies in World War I. Penicillin gets discovered as the first antibiotic, which within a decade gets mass-produced, while jet propulsion is struggling to make a liftoff. I mean, come on guys, it's not rocket science. Oh, wait. Television and electric refrigerators start becoming common appearances in houses, while Japan is working on trains that go really fast, which they are still known for today. Advancements like digital computing and high-fidelity audio are making electronics quickly pass my understanding level, while the jet engine is being invented in Germany. The Turing machine gets created, which is a mechanical version of a computer made of tape which can do algorithmic calculations. Impending doom approaches as nuclear fission just got discovered in Germany. Oh, and if you thought the situation couldn't get worse, the Germans also used those jet engines from earlier to create the first ballistic missile. Fermi, with not much time left, creates the first nuclear reactor in the United States. With the groundwork set and the theoretics tested, the United States creates the first atomic bomb. But because the Germans already surrendered, they decided to test it out on Japan. Twice. Back to space, the USSR beat the US to space with Sputnik at about the same time the polio vaccines started being distributed across the world. And now we enter the post-war era, which is so modern your grandparents or maybe even your parents were born in this period. We will start off the post-war era with the invention of the transistor, which helps amplify electrical currents in a circuit. Talking about circuits, the integrated circuit combined those transistors with lots of other parts to simplify them and eventually just became known as the computer chip. The first video game, obviously the greatest advancement in all of human history, gets created, which was just a ball that bounced back and forth, but still, greatest achievement ever. Tennis for 2. Solid-state drives and commercial nuclear power are invented, but never really get to see their true potential. With nuclear power being commercialized, nuclear submarines also get constructed, which can stay underwater basically as long as food supplies last. Electric typewriters start being created, and for some reason, they didn't change the useless QWERTY layout. Ultrasonic images allow people to see their babies before they are even born. Projects like CERN help provide lots of energy for studies on the universe and particle physics. At about the same time, the first Boeing 707 starts being flown, which is a bit of a big jump from the last time I mentioned airplanes. Fusion is being researched, which in combination with fission creates the first hydrogen bomb. Not to go on a tangent, but no, fusion is not dangerous. Most politicians on both sides have 3 brain cells and refuse to economically support one of the most promising technologies of all time due to misinformation and self-interested greed. Opinionated tangent over, early color TVs and early home computers like the IBM 610 are becoming common sights in European and American homes. More advanced microwave ovens and early hybrid cars start their development. Telstar sets up the first satellite communication system, while chemical lasers and programmable calculators come next. They still can't do calculus though. ATMs speed up banking, digital audio allows encoded sound to travel on light waves, and artificial satellites help predict weather forecasts far more accurate than ever before. Wow, we're really speeding through this section. Ironically, only now the first computer mouse was made, and just slightly later, Apollo 11 gets sent into space, letting humans walk on the moon. And yep, I think this is where I can't explain how technology works anymore. The first AirPinet communication system gets released, which is like a precursor to the internet, and at the same time the first genetic engineering is taking place. Now that was ahead of its time, as basic digital watches were invented in the same year. And to finish the post-war era, the Voyager 1 and 2 probes are sent off to study the farthest planets from us in our solar system. With all these electronic developments, it's no surprise the next time frame is the early digital revolution. Welcome to the early digital revolution, which someone as young as 34 was born in. It is crazy to think there are so many developments from now to the present that there are still 4 more sections, including this one. Let's start with the first microprocessor, the Intel 4004, which was followed closely by the first Motorola mobile phones. Ironically, the first personal computers, like the Altair 8800, came after the first mobile phone, followed by the Metcalfe, or the first Ethernet. The first CDs started being produced, and GUIs started being used on electronics, which is where you click on icons and buttons through a screen. It is honestly hard to even imagine a computer without a GUI. Apple just came out with the Macintosh and the World Wide Web, which allows you to get all over the internet. GPS just came out, so people don't need to carry maps while driving anymore. Cameras just got a massive update as well, now being digitized, which makes them way easier to work with. Laser printers just put together 2 of the most random inventions, but it actually works. Spreadsheets just got invented to help organize literally everything, while LANs and WANs help people connect to the internet. Voice over IP allows calls to happen without a landline, while digital videos are being created by taking those digital photos and playing them really fast. But we have a problem. With all this new tech, people are uploading to the internet, downloading, recording, and just basically using a lot of space. And I don't know if you've seen, but digital space is slightly expensive, so let's make flash drives to help people store pictures of their children's 5th birthday or literally anything. IBM just made a PC, and now we have reached the second most important invention ever, the first important video game console, the Atari 2600. I say important because technically this abomination was first, but I'm the one who's writing the history here, so it turns out this doesn't count. Early multimedia softwares and high-definition TV are invented, so now you can't see every individual pixel of the screen. Better CDs are invented, while DSPs help merge audio and video by using some fancy algorithms. Cable modems hook you up to the internet, so you don't need to use dial-up anymore. I mean, by the time that thing finally loaded, it was already outdated. CAD softwares let people render their ideas digitally before actually building them. Interactive television became popular as the viewer can participate in the content they are watching, just like this video. I mean, you have already watched how much, might as well scroll down and interact a bit if you know what I mean. Robots have already started taking over automating some of the simplest tasks, which is probably the last time I will say, will definitely be important later. Early PDAs, which aren't even called PDAs yet, start existing, but as you could have probably guessed, they don't do much. CAD software's already got an update, not being able to render 3D objects as well, and those flash drives from earlier just got absolutely beefed up. Early versions of Wi-Fi, called WLANs, start popping up to make it even easier to get online, while email just became a thing so you can send messages in seconds. Hypertexts help connect related documents online, while encoded music notes now can be sent on light waves through MIDI files. To organize all the new users to the internet, now everybody gets an Internet Protocol suite, also known as an IP address. By the way, your IP probably gets stolen by random websites almost every day, so it's not the end of the world if your IP is leaked. And to finish off the early digital revolution, computer mice became commercial with the common use of PCs. The late digital revolution is here, which according to my YouTube statistics, most of you are born in. But I have a feeling some of you are a little younger than that, but I digress. Let's just get to the technology. Smartphones just got invented by IBM and USBs, which are becoming the standard for transporting power and data. MP3 players help play MP3 files, which carry much more information than those outdated MIDI files. DVDs just came out, simplifying both music and movies for consumers. While broadband internet has become so successful that it's basically the only internet used all the way to modern day. Online shopping starts being used to save people time, like this little startup called Amazon. It's just a bookstore anyway, I mean, who even reads anymore? Social media starts becoming a thing, which is both cool and very much not cool. Graphics cards are getting exponentially better, and now they're even in 3D. Remember back in the post-war era when lots of space developments were being made? Well, now they're actually extremely useful, with satellites now being used for television, another invention still commonly used today. The PlayStation 1 gets released, revolutionizing console gaming, while digital watches, which are basically tiny smartphones with less functions, start being sold. Do you still hate your IP being stolen? Well, don't worry, as now there's a solution. VPNs, which hide your real data with fake information. That brings me to this video's sponsor, nobody. Do you really think a YouTuber with 50 subscribers would get a sponsorship? People decide to start organizing all this new tech they buy with one large home network, so all your devices can connect to the internet in one place. But these devices are still taking up a lot of digital space, so softwares like WinZip start coming out to compress overly large files. And now it seems everything is becoming digitized or smart. Even books are digital now, with tablets coming out to read them on. And let's make a digital pen at this point too, but soon people just realized using their finger is a bit easier. The firewall now came out to protect you from all sorts of potential hacks, and I promise you it's not as scary as it sounds. More advanced robots are coming out, but they're still going to be much more important in the future. Content management systems just started being used because, surprise, surprise, people say some crazy stuff when they think they're anonymous. One of the best coding systems, Java, just came out, and online maps like MapQuest start making that GPS technology from earlier actually useful. And to finish off the late digital revolution, keyboards and mice just became wireless by using radio waves to talk. We have made it to the 21st century, which I assume is when almost all of you watching were born. A vast majority of these inventions are still used today, as they really haven't had the time to be updated. Let's start off with cloud computing, which is basically just taking all the stuff your computer used to do on the internet and make extremely fancy supercomputers do it for you to increase speeds by a ton. Social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter just came out, but they aren't really popular yet. 3D printing allows for some of the most precise shapes and structures yet, if you're willing to wait. The iPhone is an instant hit, which can be seen by the fact it basically doomed every other type of smartphone to bankruptcy. Blockchain technology absolutely makes sure that you can never delete anything on the internet, just in case you thought you might be safe. Self-driving cars just started coming out, with lots of now famous brands like Tesla hopping on the bandwagon. While AI just started existing, which in the future might end up being really important, but it's not quite there yet. 5G promises internet so powerful it could be used by a whole city, but fails miserably. At least it improved some things, but honestly it was a big disappointment in retrospect. Virtual assistants just got voices like Alexa and Google Assistant, but again they mostly fall flat in their uses. And yet another thing that completely failed its promises, virtual reality. And also augmented reality, which flopped so bad most people forgot it even exists. Now, for some things that definitely didn't fail, like quantum computing, wearable tech like Fitbits, streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, digital payments like Apple Pay, high-resolution displays like 8K TVs, and smart home devices like smart thermostats and locks. Talking about smart home appliances, let's just group those all into the Internet of Things. Yes, it's really called that, which is essentially the term for everything in your house connected to the internet. Another invention I definitely have to mention is the Boston Dynamics robots, which sadly I have to say are kind of flops. I mean, cool, they can run and jump, but like that technology has existed in different forms for over a decade. Another huge development is CRISPR gene editing, which also hasn't really done much yet, but I'm sure will do a lot in the future, with its potential to cure countless diseases. Solid-state batteries are being developed, which still aren't available for the public, but have the potential to store orders of magnitudes more energy than lithium batteries. Renewable energy is still being consistently improved, with solar panels fixing many of their various issues. 3D printers can now print literally living tissue, like look at this printer literally making a steak. Edge computing improves an array of issues with internet use, while deepfake technologies start being created, which I'm sure will have absolutely zero negative consequences. Going back to flops, smart glasses start existing, and that's about all they do. Neural interfaces start analyzing brain waves and using them to input information to a computer, which is just crazy. Fiber optic cables create speeds of internet unmatchable to broadband and probably will completely replace it in the future. Digital twins recreate real objects in the digital world by making a very precise copy of them, which is useful for simulations. And by the way, you should remember the word pineapple for the end of the video. Advanced drug delivery systems help slowly release medicine into the body instead of just releasing it all at once, which helps minimize side effects. Holograms just became a thing inspired greatly by science fiction movies like Star Wars. Robotic process automation is a fancy way of saying robots are doing slightly more complex tasks. Cybersecurity starts improving with better encryption, but it still lags behind advanced hackers' abilities. Even fabrics are smart now, with certain textiles being able to sense and respond to stimuli around them. Think of beds which cool down automatically when you get too hot. Satellites are now being commonly used for the internet around the globe with Starlink, while AI starts being used to help doctors diagnose patients. Supercomputers start absolutely skyrocketing in power, as they are useful for thousands of different things, including finding tall cacti in Minecraft. SpaceX develops reusable rockets, while AI starts generating some questionable art. To finish up the early 21st century, pretty fittingly is smart city technologies to organize the extremely complex world we live in. We've made it to the final segment, the modern day. I know we've only had a small handful of years in the 2020s so far, but I wanted to highlight just how much progress is still being made, while also discussing the most groundbreaking technology being developed today. Let's start with the development of mRNA vaccines, which make your cells produce a specific protein, which in turn causes your immune system to be activated and begin to produce antibodies for that protein. Artificial intelligence start rapidly changing, eventually leading to the development of ChatGPT. 6G technology starts its development, which hopefully doesn't flop as hard as 5G. With AI's quick growth, doctors capitalize on the opportunity and start using AI to develop new potential drugs. Remember that meat printer from earlier? Well, now machines can literally grow meat by using muscle cells and covering them in a broth of all the nutrients they need to live. Self-driving cars have become so efficient that they basically don't need any more human intervention, while extended reality technology is still a complete flop. Smart contact lenses just came out, being able to enhance your vision and regulate your health. More devices that regulate your health are advanced biosensors, which are basically watches that track your blood pressure and glucose levels. Robots start doing surgery due to being far more accurate than humans, while finance is becoming more and more decentralized, with people exchanging money, mostly crypto, directly between each other, skipping over banks. Remember that edge computing from earlier? Well, it just got mashed with AI to create Edge AI, which allows devices to process data locally without relying on the cloud. Much more knowledge in genetics is discovered with the use of genomics and bioinformatics. Continuing in the medical area, telemedicine starts being used to commonly diagnose patients, albeit less accurately, without them needing to come into a doctor's office. Solid-state batteries make a lot more progress, but there's still a future invention. Those neural interfaces from earlier just got upgraded into Neuralink, which literally lets people move mouse cursors by just thinking about it. Telepresence robotics allows people to have a robotic clone of themselves represent them across the globe, similar to a hologram. 3D printing starts being used commonly for construction purposes, allowing digital simulations to become real objects relatively simply. Personal assistants are becoming actually useful, being combined with AI, while some rich billionaires are literally touring space. Hydrogen can finally be produced in a green way, and artificial photosynthesis just became a thing. Isn't that just solar panels? I don't know, let's just move on. Some electronics have become biodegradable, while robots have automated even extremely complex tasks. And to finish off the modern day, we got personalized medicine based off genetics and nanotechnology in medicine, which can deliver medicine to extremely precise spots in the body. Well, you did it. You finished the video. I hope you enjoyed and at least can make a little sense of how the modern world came to be. This video literally took me months of work, so I'd be very grateful for a like and sub. And oh, by the way, I hit a few keywords somewhere in this video, and if you're one of the first 10 people to message me on Discord with all the keywords, I'll make a video on whatever topic you want, unless it's inappropriate for a public audience. You definitely deserve it for watching this long of a video. I'll see you in the next one.